How many recruits should Ohio State try and sign each year out of its own backyard in the Buckeye State? Hi, my name is Brian Smith, and I'm going to examine a little bit of this today, comparing the last few recruiting classes for Ryan Day and looking back at some of the classes right around the time Urban Meyer took over for Ohio State. It's going to be kind of a baseline, looking at things with the big picture, talking about winning games being the bottom line. So, without further ado, here we go. A couple of notes right off the bat, just statistically. Ohio State obviously is not really struggling in recruiting over the last few years from a general perspective. The key for them is to get back to elite recruiting nationally, getting a kid here or there that might change their D-line board, their corner board, or something like that. I'm not trying to get into too much depth on that. This is more about in-state, out-of-state, and just trying to develop kids. So here's the number one thing. Looking at the last few classes, this is how many Ohio State signed from inside their own state borders. 2020, they signed 8. 2021, they signed 6. 2022, they signed 6. And then this past class, they signed 7. Now, they have 7 already for the class of 24, and there's a long way to go. It's a pretty good year in the state of Ohio. And I knew last year from talking to people close to the program that it was going to be a class they would go after a little harder. There's more DBs, there's more talent at running back, et cetera, than some of the other classes in the last 5 years, let's say, give or take. Ohio State went after them. Their bottom line and their agenda is pretty simple from what I've been told. Sign elite kids no matter where they're from. And I'm sure that a lot of Ohio State faithful want to win with kids from their home backyard. That makes sense. But I also understand that if you're not winning and you're Ryan Day, they don't care where they're from. It's a double-edged sword. So they've kind of went out of state a little bit more. And especially at key positions, they've had to do that with their offensive style, et cetera. So we're going to come back to that in a moment. But here are a few of the classes going back 2010, 2011, and 12. And then I'm going to dive into the 2013 class a little more specifically. I'm going to kind of talk about it because that class was a really special one in terms of some of the high upside NFL guys they got. They were in-state and mostly out-of-state. 2010, they signed 10 kids that were from inside the state. That's right before Urban got there, okay? They were ranked 17th. 14 kids in 11. They were signed. That was the 6th best class. 16 in the 5th best class and 12. So things really hadn't changed much once Urban had got there. But then we got to 2013, and that class was way different. The reason is not only did they take really good players from out of state, they took really good players that made instant impacts. They still signed 10 kids from the state of Ohio, which is fine. But Urban and his staff got 3 from Texas, 2 from Florida, 2 from Georgia, 1 from California. They got a New Jersey kid. I'll get back to that in a second. North Carolina, South Carolina. They recruited more like a team would that really doesn't have much of an in-state pool, but they still got 10 kids. They just hit on an incredibly high number of out-of-state kids. I'm just using 247 as a rankings composite, kind of looking at it. Von Bell out of Georgia, national recruit. Jalen Marshall was the local kid that everybody wanted him to get. They did get him, a receiver. But then they got Joey Bosa out of Florida. They got Eli Apple out of Jersey. They got this one guy, I think you've heard of him, Ezekiel Elliott out of St. Louis. When you get those kind of guys, you don't care about where they're from. That's just my opinion. Ohio State certainly did a good job with some of these kids from the outset and getting them. And they still got Cameron Burrows and other guys from in-state. But they went out and got Dontre Wilson from DeSoto. That's in Dallas. Ohio State at that time really hadn't made a mark in the state of Texas. And getting a kid from DeSoto on the south edge of Dallas was a good sign. California, Marcus Ball. They go down, they get J.T. Barrett out of Wichita Falls, Ryder High School, just outside the Fort Worth area, just outside of Dallas. These are all kids that Tressel may or may not have recruited, but Urban made them a priority because he thought they were impact guys. He was right. Also, just kind of filling out the class, that they hit on a couple of kids. This is hilarious. They got some, like Michael Hill, the defensive tackle out of South Carolina. Ohio State's never had a lot of success down there. Part of that is Urban. They got a wide receiver in Corey Smith that was a junior college player out of Mississippi. They also got this. This is the fun part. When you look at this, Tyquan Lewis, a weak side defensive end out of Tarboro, North Carolina. Again, kids, it's not like they can't get kids out of North Carolina, but they've never really focused on those areas. And then they also get like Chris Worley out of Toledo, Glenville. So back to the original question. Ohio State's still having really good classes. I will grant you that. But can they win national titles doing it kind of way that Tressel did? And this is where the road splits. In my opinion, the answer is no. And it's not anything that Ohio State is doing now. It's just what's happened demographically. And this is the big elephant in the room. More people are moving south. There aren't as many prospects in the state of Ohio as there used to be at the elite level. Even if it's just one or two less, that's a big deal. Because that one or two guys, if you were to add them every year to Ohio State's roster, you don't have to go to South Carolina and Texas as much. You don't have to go to Florida and Georgia as much. You don't have to hit California and New Jersey as much. They have to go a little further. To that point, certain positions, for whatever reason, tend to be in certain areas. Now, there's been a plethora of great running backs come out of the state of Ohio, Archie Griffin, etc., Robert Smith. The list is insane for not just Ohio State, but for other schools too, Penn State, Michigan, Notre Dame. They went all over the place. Great players. That's fine. But if you can go get Jeremiah Smith from Chaminade, Madonna, who I think is the number one player in the class of 2024, haven't seen him numerous times, you got to go get him at receiver. And if you want to get a great player like Joey Bosa, he just happened to be from Fort Lauderdale too, down that same area. Whatever spot it is, doesn't even matter what position, you have to go get him. Should Ohio State approach 10 in most years? Debatable. But I would say that the likely number is probably going to stick to about where it's at right now, 6 to 8. There is the one caveat to this, and that's a rule that I'm not sure is going to work out real well. But the NCAA has now made it a situation where you don't have to stick to 25 guys in a class. So if the portal really hurts you one year and kids leave, kids want to play, quarterbacks, whatever, you sign 27, you sign 29. Ohio State could get back up to that 10, but they might take a few more chances on kids in state. More of them are probably going to get into a situation where they leave anyway if it doesn't work out. But 1 through 10, like their top end players, I don't think Ohio State is going to sign as many in-state prospects as what they once did. Growing up in the Midwest, I know they certainly dominated in-state, and they didn't really need to do anything different in the 80s and 90s when I first started really watching college football. But now it has changed. I expect them to continue to hit Jersey, D.C. They're really going after some D.C. kids, Dylan Stewart, and some other guys that are really good football players, and they should. Florida, they're after Josiah Trader, Jeremiah Smith's teammate. I talked to Josiah the other day. He's going to visit Ohio State. He confirmed that once again. You have to go after those kids. The only other thing that I will note on this is my final point. If you're going to not get in-state kids, that's one thing. But if they go to the school up north and beat you, that's quite another. You're going to lose like 1 or 2 a year, but you can't let it be like 4 or 5. That's my only point. If you do, you better beat Michigan if you're Ryan Day. That's the one caveat to this, and I'm not sure there's an answer to it because sometimes you still may have wanted another kid more. But if you take the out-of-state kid over the in-state kid and it's close and the kid goes to Michigan and hurts you, that's not going to end well. Ohio State fans are unforgiving, as anybody watching this podcast probably knows, and you're probably one of them. Again, you would probably much prefer to win with a kid from inside the state as opposed to out of it. So anyway, I'm curious about this. It's something I've been studying for a while. I think that it's okay with what they're doing. They're still getting some pretty darn good players from inside the Buckeye State. But Ryan Day and his staff, they're human. They're going to go after the kids they think that can help them win and keep their jobs. The Jeremiah Smiths in the world, if they're from Ohio, fine. If they're not, they're still just going to go after them where they're at. So keep that in mind. Please like this podcast. Please share it and please comment. I'm curious to what you think a normal number would be, say for a 25-man class, how many they should get from the Buckeye State. And if you think it's something totally different, fire away too. Anyway, hope you have a great day. Thank you very much.